Welcome to Green Living. This is part of a series of 2 to 5 minute shorts on the subject of toxins and how they find their way into our homes, bodies, and children. First order of business is that you have to know where you came from in order to get where you're going. So here's where we came from. The 2012 budget proposal included Medicare and Medicare-related expenses, Medicaid, things like that, healthcare expenses, that were on order of 12.86% of the federal budget. Medicare and health as a percentage of total federal spending, however, is upwards of 24-25%. And that was in 2012 as well. So bottom line is that it's common knowledge that we have a healthcare spending problem. But what's not well understood or addressed is the true causes. And yes, it's true that people are living longer, a metric we often relate with success. But the truly important measure, that of their quality of life in those later years, is showing some disturbingly negative results. Right now we have an aging population which are expected to drive up healthcare costs as greater and greater numbers qualify for and then transfer their healthcare costs from their work-life medical plans to Medicare. So this is basically what's happening with the baby boom generation. They're heading into retirement with enrollment in Medicare set to grow by about 1.6 million people annually. And then on top of that, nearly half the U.S. population has one or more chronic conditions like asthma, heart disease, or diabetes, which is going to help to drive up healthcare costs. And then 2/3 of adults are either overweight or obese, which can also lead to chronic illness and additional medical spending. So that's kind of where we stand. Right now we spend over about $7,000 per person per year directly on healthcare, and this doesn't even include things like raising a child with severe learning disabilities or coping with a young mother's breast cancer diagnosis or anything like that. So that's kind of puts things into perspective. And here's what they're projecting for 2020. About $4.6 trillion dedicated to healthcare. That's about $1 in every 5 in the economy. And it includes, including government and private money. Healthcare spending in 2020 is going to be averaging about $13,710 for every man, woman, and child. And this is directly from the Medicare Office of the Actuary. This is numbers they crunch directly. So again, we're having a healthcare spending crisis even as people are supposedly living longer and their quality of life during that time is obviously dropping. So now here's some information directly from the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. As a nation, more than 75% of our healthcare spending is on people with chronic conditions. Chronic means lasting, as opposed to say you break your arm. That's an acute event where something happens and then you heal. Chronic means that it's something that you have to manage over time because it's not going to go away. So we have these chronic conditions are causing deaths that could have essentially been prevented, lifelong disability and compromised quality of life, as well as growing healthcare costs, obviously. 7 out of 10 deaths among Americans each year from chronic diseases. In 2005, 133 million Americans, over almost 1 in every 2 adults, had at least one chronic illness. And of course, like I said before, 66% of adults are either overweight or obese. 1 in every 3 adults is obese. Almost 1 in 5 youth between the ages of 6 and 19. And then there's diabetes, and you think of diabetes as something, it's so prevalent that it's not that big of a deal. But really, it continues to be the leading cause of kidney failure, non-traumatic lower extremity amputations, and blindness among adults from as little as 20 years old to 74. And that's probably projected to increase with children getting diabetes much earlier than they normally would have years ago. Diabetes used to be the kind of disease that you would get in old age, and then it transferred itself to the kind of disease that you could get as an adult, and now it's becoming the kind of disease that you can actually get as a child. So imagine trying to manage this disease and try to prevent yourself from getting kidney failure, blindness, amputations, all throughout life rather than towards the end of your life. And lastly, I just want to kind of close with a graph. This is an interactive graph that I got from the Washington Post that I thought was really cool. You can go there. There's a link to on the bottom of the slide and look yourself. So this graph shows numbers for people born in 2010. So if you're born in 2010, your average life expectancy is projected to be about 75.9 years. The problem, once again, is that your healthy years are only up to about 65. That means 14.5% of your life as a male in America will be unhealthy and disabled. That's staggering, an amount that I can't imagine, but am living it because I've had cancer 3 times, so I understand it very intimately. But I can't imagine every man, woman, and child living under those conditions. Now here's the same graph for women. Projected numbers for people born in 2010, once again, females, life expectancy 80.5 years, healthy years 67.4. And they're projected to have 16.3% of their life as unhealthy or disabled. So, and my next series of slides, I'm going to start getting into how your health is affected by toxic exposure in the home and everywhere else. But for now, I just kind of want to make sure that people understand that just because we're living longer doesn't mean that it's a good measure of how well you're going to be living.